Hey everyone, welcome back. Good to see you. It's been a minute. That's my fault. Not yours, of course. Couldn't possibly be your fault. I'll get into some of the personal stuff and kind of what's been going on in my ridiculously chaotic life for the past few weeks after this. But it has been interesting. It's been an interesting. God, it's probably been close to a month. I don't know, man. Time's a blur. That's not what we're talking about here. So maybe if you've kept up with my content or followed some of the stuff that I've done or talked about, you've heard me mention this kind of experiment that I ran on Facebook when it came to their fact checkers after they implemented new COVID-19 policies in terms of, what is misinformation, what will they be censoring and not censoring, and so on and so forth. I finally was able to get some time to finish up this. I actually made a Google Slides, a PowerPoint to kind of show you what I did, why I did it, what my conclusions are. And then we'll look at some of the stuff with YouTube as well at the end. And then hopefully we'll conclude with maybe teeing up the next phase of some of the stuff I want to be talking to you guys about. But this is kind of more of a just showing you just how ridiculous Facebook is and how some of these policies are and how they work and so on and so forth. So I don't really have an outline outside of making this PowerPoint. So we'll see how it goes. Man, I haven't done a PowerPoint for a video in so freaking long. That's what I started off doing, but it has been a while. All right. So we're just going to share my screen here. I'm going to have to close out of the video selectively in here so that you guys can see all of the slides here. But so what kind of inspired me to even run this experiment whenever I was up, I think it was when I was in Montana working. I remember that someone had tweeted out that Facebook had changed their policies. They included some screenshots. So I went and looked at it and verified. I'm like, holy crap, these are true. And here are two of the things that I just thought were really alarming, and it kind of inspired me to do this. So the first one was they added this thing called shocking stories. And what they say here is that content that otherwise does not violate our COVID-19 or vaccine policies above, but that shares potentially or actually true events or facts that raise safety concerns indicated by sharing personal anecdotes or news events of severe adverse events, either in hyperbolic terms or without context. Example, my friend got the vaccine and now has Bell's palsy, be warned. So like Nicki Minaj would be a good example, talking about, her cousin's friend somewhere who had something happen with his testicles, so on and so forth. I guess that would probably qualify because their point is you can't share stuff that might make someone hesitant to get the vaccine. So anyway, here's another one: promoting vaccine refusals or alternatives. Now, this is a little misleading because they're saying promoting refusing to get it, but a lot of these cases are more about saying, I'm against vaccine mandates. I think freaking Merriam-Webster, someone shared this yesterday. I probably should have gotten a screenshot of it. Someone shared a screenshot of a dictionary entry where anti-vaxxer included people who are opposed to vaccine mandates, not just vaccines, which is pretty crazy to me. Anyway, so this is saying, look, if you celebrate nurses, so it says promoting alternative treatments or natural immunity, or celebrating those who refuse vaccination. I don't know why I underlined the word those there. That's probably not what I meant to do with that. And encouraging vaccine refusals without citing medical rationales or guidance. So an example of this is these nurses who are taking a stand and refusing this worthless vaccine are my heroes. Well, what if you remove the word worthless from that? These nurses who have natural immunity and think that a vaccine mandate is authoritarian whenever it comes to that particular situation, that would violate Facebook's new policies here. So they're saying it wouldn't otherwise violate it, but here it does. Again, this is promoting alternative treatments or natural immunity. So promoting natural immunity, right? So literally by these policies, which I think this was updated in August, if I'm not mistaken, I think in the middle end of August, by saying you get natural immunity, you get these antibodies, you violate our policy here, and they could take this stuff down. Or if you say, I stand with healthcare workers who are opposing mandates. So these are the things that I was like, this is crazy, man. Like, I mean, we all know stuff like Hunter Biden's laptop and what Facebook and Twitter and them did. Twitter and Facebook have been particularly terrible with anything that's outside of the established orthodoxy, the things they've done with, Brett and Heather Weinstein, and, even just their Unity 2020 project that they did. The list goes on, right? But I was curious about, first off, I'm not on Facebook anymore. I got rid of it a long time ago. I think it was after the election. And, there was a few things I would use it for, that I would, reactivate my account so I could go and, maybe do this one thing and then deactivate it again. So I don't use Facebook, but I was like, man, I want to reactivate it because I want to test this out. So they say here, even if you share something that's true, but it raises safety concerns and might, make someone hesitant to get it, that is a problem for us. So the question I had was, well, if you will censor truth, or you're worried about truth that has a conclusion that you disagree with, how do you feel about lies that have a conclusion that you agree with? And so that was the experiment I wanted to run. I didn't want to share false stuff that was against vaccines, but I wanted to share crazy false stuff, demonstrably false, that was in favor of them, to see if any of that would get flagged as misinformation. So before I get into how the experiment went, I want to say something just on the front end. I was talking to someone about this and they kind of rolled their eyes at me doing this. And I said, well, hold on. This isn't necessarily, this happens to be about these vaccines, but it's more about the principle of censoring truth because you don't like the implications and allowing lies because you agree with the implications. Like, imagine if somehow, we're in the Holy Roman Empire, still, but today, and Facebook was controlled by a super corrupt version of the Catholic Church. And they said, you can't share stories about how you were touched by a priest because it might make someone think that occasionally a priest might touch someone inappropriately, even if that story is true. Like, you would go, okay, yeah, no, that's wrong. People should be able to share true stories because it's true, period. You know what I mean? And so this is more about the principle of it than anything else. That's what I'm primarily concerned with. There are some people, you can have your opinions about these things. That's fine. I've shared a lot of this on my locals, and I've even made a video going through some of the concerns that I have about these things, but that's not what this is about. This is about the principle of this, and just the fact that there are no limiting principles to this mentality. See what I'm saying? There is no limiting principle of, like, hey, look, we have a filtration thing. And the filtration, or the sifting mechanism for information is, does it have conclusions we like? If the primary sifting mechanism is it true, you're in really dicey territory. Okay. And I'm going to get into a quote here in a minute that kind of highlights that. But so that's where I'm coming from here. And the way I ran this experiment was when I told my wife, I'm like, hey, there's going to be some crazy stuff. I'm back on Facebook. There's going to be some crazy stuff here. Just ignore that. I'm just playing a game. She's like, okay, whatever, man. And then I had some friends. I asked them on the front end. I said, hey, I'm going to start seeding my timeline with some things that are going to look weird at first, and then they're going to get progressively more insane. Can you help me here in a few weeks start just flagging some of these things as misinformation? They're like, can do. So there are some people that are in on it. And most people weren't. So anyway, that's how the experiment ran. Let's go to the next slide. I forgot I was doing like a PowerPoint here. So here was the quote that I wanted to kind of start this off with that it made me think of. So Kevin of Engineering Politics and we've been doing this book review of The Road to Serfdom. We're almost done with it, but there's this quote from chapter 11 called The End of Truth that this lines right up with. And Hayek, of course, was writing this initially in the 30s into the early 40s, describing the rise of socialism first in Nazi Germany and National Socialism and just collectivist ideology that he was seeing spread into Great Britain as well. And in this chapter, The End of Truth, he writes, quote, facts and theories must thus become no less the object of official doctrine than views about values. And the whole apparatus for spreading knowledge, I swear to God, this it gives me chills how accurate Hayek had this stuff. Anyway, the whole apparatus for spreading knowledge, the schools and the press, wireless and cinema, will be used exclusively to spread those views which, whether true or false, will strengthen the belief in the rightness of the decisions taken by the authority. And all information that might cause doubt or hesitancy will be withheld. The probable effects on the people's loyalty to the system becomes the only criterion for deciding whether a particular piece of information is to be published or suppressed. End quote. I mean, that is like, seriously, you can just marinate in the reality that Hayek is talking about the rise of the propaganda system in Nazi Germany as he's writing those words in the early 40s, and how that someone could take that sentence verbatim. You don't even have to change it, because when he says wireless there, I assume he's talking about radio. But you could take that sentence verbatim and put it to today, and someone could just think that was an observation that Joe Schmo off the street made about the big tech and higher education, everything today, and the corporate press. So, but that idea, it doesn't matter whether it's true or false. Does it support the message? Does it support the narrative? That's the only filtration that we have here. That is obviously insane. So here's how I started. So first off, you can put these filters on your profile pictures. Whenever it comes to, I'll just move this down here. Whenever it comes to your Facebook profile. And so I changed mine to like, let's do this, let's get vaccinated or something like this. There's a few that are clearly like filters that they made for conservatives. I can't remember what some of them were, but it was like spreading dangerous misinformation or something like that. And it's like, you know that they're using these things as part of the algorithm to track who the like conservatives or, you know, people outside of the orthodoxy are, right? Like, of course they are. Anyway, so this is what I started with, you know, any word on vaccine approval for less than 12-year-olds. I don't really want my daughter to be another one of the millions of dead toddlers who didn't have access to it. So hashtag wear a mask, hashtag get vaccinated, be protected, and hashtag do your part. So I started stuff like that. And right away, I would get these comments, and I'll go into some of the comments that I would get later, because I don't have a lot of people who aren't, I'll word that differently. Most of the people who were friends with me that were on the left, which was pretty much all of my friends, really, you know, all through high school and college, not all, but almost all, have blocked me or unfriended me or whatever, because, you know, dangerous political views, I guess, which is just being heterodox. Even after I made videos like why I'm not a Republican, why I'm not a Democrat, they still block me. Anyway, that's a whole nother thing. But this is kind of what I started with. So millions of dead toddlers because of COVID-19. Obviously, that's not the case, but there it is. So that's what I started with. Then I progressed up. This one I just kind of had fun with Australia. All the alt-right conspiracy theorists complaining about the excessive measures being taken in Australia instead of worrying about the heavily armed MAGA militia that nearly toppled our government on 1/6. Seem to conveniently forget that none of this would happen if the Aussies just shut up, did their part, and obeyed the government. It's not complicated. So I included a link to an article from the BBC about how they're deploying the military to enforce lockdowns in Sydney. And then I'd also commented about that story. I don't know if you guys heard about, they put down these like shelter dogs because they were worried about people coming to pick them up and people couldn't take care of them. So they literally killed dogs at an animal shelter because they didn't want people traveling to pick up the animals. And I said they'd be alive if Australians were less concerned about rights and more concerned about doing their part to end this thing. What was funny about this one is I actually had someone comment who was like, you know, they did, instead of liking, they did like the little heart thing, and they equated it to like BLM stuff. And they're like, yeah, during the BLM protests, they were told, you know, to do what they're told and to follow the law. And that was okay. But, you know, in this case, it's not okay. I'm like, I'm not sure that this is the same. Saying, hey, you should follow the regular laws that we already have is not the same as creating new authoritarian ones. But either way, that was funny. So here we go. This is where you start to get some of the Facebook's tags. So this tag you see here on the one on the left, visit the COVID-19 Information Center for vaccine resources. That is the extent of any tag. They clearly have some algorithm where that just gets added to anything that brings up the vaccine in some instances, but not all of them, because you see it's not in the one on the right. But so here's another one. If you're one of the people falsely claiming that recovery from COVID-19 produces some magical antibodies that provide adequate protection from future infections, you're going to get people killed. Hashtag get vaccinated to be protected is the only way to guarantee the prevention of infection and transmission of COVID-19. Period. End of story. Enough with this conspiratorial garbage about the human immune system. So lots of lies in here, obviously, magical antibodies that vaccines guarantee prevention and infection, or guarantee the prevention of infection and transmission of COVID-19. And that it's a conspiracy theory to call the human immune, or to say that we have a human immune system. Actually, as a side note, I remember tweeting about this. I get this thing called the New York Times daily briefing or morning briefing. And this is one from, 2 months ago. And there was a thing in there about COVID-19 misinformation. I'll have to try and find that. I wish I would have remembered this and put it in here. But they talked about fighting COVID misinformation online and conspiracy theories. And one of the things they called the conspiracy theories is natural antibodies from catching and recovering from COVID. I kid you not, the New York Times had that in there. So anyway, this one got 24 comments. I'll get into some of those later. Here's another one. Parents throwing a fit about their kids having to wear masks again in school should just be grateful their elementary schooler isn't among the hundreds of thousands of school-age children dead from the Delta variant alone. So ungrateful. Hashtag vax up, hashtag gratitude, hashtag wear a mask. And there's all these hashtags in there. Vaccines bring us closer, things like that, that Facebook has in there that are just hilarious in my opinion. So I got a lot of comments on several of these, but of course these are things that can be measured, right? Like guarantee the prevention and guarantee to be not infected or transmit COVID-19. Like that's a lie. That's misinformation. Hundreds of thousands of school-age children dead from the Delta variant alone. That's a lie. That's obvious nonsense. No problem from Facebook there. Here was another one. I threw these in here, like this one on the right. I'll do this one first. Dr. Fauci's literally never been wrong, misled us, or provided conflicting or contradictory information to the public. Hashtag trust the science, hashtag vax up. I threw a bunch of those in there. We'll get into some of the better ones here in a minute. This one on the left was kind of one of my final ones that I did, but it's so long, like full of nonsense that I wanted to include it here. This is not a comprehensive list of all the things that I posted. This is just some of my favorites. Parents, the vaccine is free of risk, free of downsides, free of anything concerning whatsoever. There have been zero reports of negative consequences or unforeseen outcomes from getting these literal miracles of modern science. The only cost is bearing the weight of knowing you did your part to protect your child, protect yourself, and end this awful pandemic. Now, you tell me, isn't that a bargain worth making? Would you rather join the tens of thousands of other parents who unnecessarily lost their middle schooler to COVID-19 due to the parents' own stubbornness and ignorance? How can anyone live with themselves knowing they got their child killed over politics? Book an appointment, vax up, do your part, wear a mask. Let's finally defeat COVID-19 for good. So, of course, this is nonsense. No matter how you feel about these things, there is nothing that is free of risk or downside. There have been zero reports of negative consequences or unforeseen outcomes. That's all nonsense. But anyway, that's the kind of thing. And what's funny is that there are still a few people, like the only people who are on the left who are still friends with me on Facebook, not the only, but most are people that are related to me. And I would get like them like liking these posts. And I'm like, dude, this is insane. Like, how do you think this is serious? The conservatives took it seriously at first also, actually all the way through. Some of them did. Okay, I think I already put this one in here, so that was redundant. That's pretty funny though. Okay, so here was some of the responses I got. So someone had commented to me on one of them. They're like, pass, I'm not going to do this. And I replied to them, thousands of people, including hundreds of toddlers, are dying every day from the Delta variant due to this reckless belief in some mystical notion about the immune system. So thousands of people, including hundreds of toddlers, are dying every day. Hundreds of toddlers every single day. Demonstrably false. I had a few, it was one of those like, oh, bless your heart moments. I had a few people that were honestly trying to engage in the things that I was saying. And I'm just like, it didn't matter how crazy the thing I said was, they would just keep responding with like being super charitable. And I'm like, dude, I finally had to message a few of them and be like, stop. Like, This is not, you're not going to get what you're looking for here. This is not serious. So what, like one of them posted like super long paragraph, very, hey, here's the information I have. Here's what I know. And I said, follow the science. You're literally getting people killed. The information is available. Oh, this is, I think, one where someone, I should have included this. I didn't include it in here, but someone asked for a link to some of the sources I was citing. And I went and got a CDC. This is a little tangent here, but it's kind of funny. I went and got a CDC study about, I think it was feline leukemia in like mountain lions or something ridiculous like that. And I posted that, and I got a few conservatives who were like, oh, well, CDC link, not going to look at it. And so a few of them, I was like, dude, are you serious? Like, okay. Just because the CDC right now is clearly compromised in a lot of ways doesn't mean that it always has been. What if that was a study from like 1994 or something about AIDS? Like, it is probably fine. Anyway, I've got a lot of laughs at the expense of people on the left and the right while doing this, by the way. But then the person was like, is this the right link? And I think this might've been one of them, it might've been my response to that. I don't know. But either way, I said, follow, like, the information is out there. Just get the booster shots and be thankful you're still breathing, unlike the hundreds of 6 to 9-year-olds who are dying of this every hour. So every hour, hundreds of 6 to 9-year-olds and evidently hundreds of toddlers every day are dying. And if you look, some people kind of got this as a joke. And then I get someone asking, like, where are you getting this from? Like, getting all this. And they're like, I don't care, but this is personal choice. And I said that personal choice is killing billions of people because of your personal choices. So I just kept upping the ante. This is one of my favorites right here. I got to tell you, this kind of, whoa. There we go. Okay. I'm using this Google Slides. I can't move this. Doesn't matter. So this is one of my favorites. So I said, the facts are in. There are no risks or downsides to getting vaccinated against COVID-19. Stop making excuses and vax up so we can beat this thing. Hashtag do your part. So no risks or downsides. This is a demonstrably false statement. It just is. My buddy, gosh, I keep trying to move the box that has my picture in it so I can look at this, and it's like moving anyway, I'll just stop messing with it. So Facebook gives its typical visit the COVID-19 Information Center for Vaccine Information. And a friend of mine posts this comic here, and it's got the little like exclamation mark. You can learn stuff about it, but it's grayed over, right? So this comic, so this is a lie. There are no risks or downsides is obvious nonsense. He posts this comic, and the comic gets flagged. So it's been flagged as partly false information. You can look at it. This information but checked. So when you go to click more information, all it says is the same partly false information was checked in another post by fact checkers. There may be small differences. Independent fact checkers say this information has some factual inaccuracies, and you can learn more. So this is their more information explanation, is that because we said so. Fact checkers said this is false. Here's what the comic says. So I'm immune, right? No, you can still get it. But do I still have to wear a mask? Yes. Is the manufacturer liable if I'm harmed? No. Why did I do this? No idea. I'm just following orders. Literally nothing in there is false. Do I still have to wear a mask? Might, depending on the situation, but there are some places where if you're on an airplane, they don't ask if you're vaccinated. You still have to wear a mask, right? So nothing in this comic is false at all. This is all totally true, accurate information. Maybe, except for the nurse saying I'm just following orders, but it's a comic. That nurse is just following orders, I guess. So that gets flagged because people said they didn't like it. Whereas me saying there are no risks or downsides, that's fine. You can click here for more information about this obvious insanity. So here was the last one that I did where I was just like, okay. So just a reminder that more elementary school age children have died from COVID-19 than all casualties in both world wars combined. It kind of speaks for itself, right? I had some fun with these. Here's some of the responses I got to this one. This is just great. Someone said, what? And another person said he's either been hacked or is over the top sarcastic. Zero chance anyone believed this. I said, sending kids unmasked and unvaccinated into schools has the fatality equivalence of nearly 3 Omaha beaches every single day. Vaccine Nation is the solution, by the way, is a hashtag on Facebook that is terrifying. Someone said, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. You've lost it. There's another comment. What a terrible day to be literate. What's funny is that some of these were conservatives who like, no, they should know better. They should know better, but instead we're responding with stuff like this. But either way, it was pretty funny. So at the end, this is the last thing I posted about, well, in this vein, where I just wanted to make it really clear for people. And again, this is just a thin slice of the interactions I had on there and the things I posted, but I'm seeing a lot of dangerously false information on social media, particularly when it comes to COVID-19. Fortunately, the fact checkers at Facebook are catching and flagging most of it. Thank God. If you happen to come across some of this, if you happen across some of these dangerous lies that somehow slip through the cracks, here's an easy step-by-step guide on how to report that misinformation to Facebook so they can flag it as such. Besides the obvious wear a mask and backs up, fighting dangerous misinformation is one more way to hashtag do your part so we can hashtag defeat COVID-19. So I literally created a pictograph. This is obviously this one post, but it looked weird like here. So this is the picture I attached. A step-by-step guide on how to report posts as misinformation. So I'm saying report my posts. These are crazy. Report these. So I was hoping that in addition, I don't know if people did. I don't know. Like other than the people that I'd already talked to who were flagging my stuff constantly as misinformation. So I don't know if other people did, but there were a few comments that I got of people saying like, where are the fact checkers? Like, this is misinformation. Like, this is clearly not true. So this is my way of saying like, report me, bro. Like, come on. It's right here. Here's how you do all of this. This is not complicated. Anyway, so the very last thing I did was I shared something that was negative against the vaccine. So I shared this article from the Lancet about how your risk of Bell's palsy is between 3 and 5 and 7 times higher than would be expected in the general population. So all I did was include quotes from this article from the Lancet. And I said, COVID-19 vaccines increase your risk of developing Bell's palsy, which is a condition, It often resolves itself after 6 months, though physical therapy may be required during recovery. So this is the only time I got this tag. COVID-19 vaccines go through many tests for safety and effectiveness and are then monitored closely. So this is from WHO. So the only time I got anything talking about how safe they were was whenever I posted this. Now, I don't know what if I would have posted, I didn't get any comments either. Some of them I'm like, did people even see this? Because some of them you saw I would get like 24, 21 comments. Some of them would be 0. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what's going on here. But this was one that got 0 interaction. So I don't know, like if I would have not included this, I wanted to do this just to show like they didn't overly censor this. But they did include, this is the only time they got a tag saying, hey, no, these things are fine. These are great. These are okay. But what if I would have said this without including the link to the Lancet article? I don't know. I didn't want to, honestly, I hate Facebook. And so I was just like, I want to do this so that I could have something to say that I did try the other side of it. They didn't remove the post. They didn't censor it, but I honestly didn't have the mental stamina or desire to then immediately pivot and run the experiment in the opposite direction, because any checks that someone did, if they looked at the timeline, they'd be like, okay, this guy's nuts. He's all over the place. So this was the only thing I did like this. So why do I tell you all this, tell you about this experiment? Well, let's first look at some of the stuff that Mark Zuckerberg has said here. So this is from an article. I think this one's from August. This is on CBS. Yeah, this is from August 19th. This is about when these things happened. So here's Zuckerberg saying, I think it's been an unprecedented effort to help encourage people to get vaccinated, to promote authoritative information about COVID-19 and the vaccines, to fight and take down information. So he's saying like all of this is obviously very pro in this direction, which as an aside raises the question of what happens after all of these entities and institutions have pushed this and said they're amazing. Like, obviously I'm not saying that the hypothetical I'm about to pose is accurate, but what if tomorrow they found out there was some crazy safety risk in these. It's like, well, what do you do whenever you've been pushing these on people? Like, where the incentives lie? I'll let you guys, mull that over in your own mind. If Facebook would allow that information out or not, I don't know. You can but do your own little thought experiment there. But either way, they're saying only authoritative information. We'll talk about that at the end. Here's another. This is from I think this might have been from the same interview. CBS just ran multiple articles on it. Yeah, this is from the day before, where they're quoting Joe Biden, who was talking about it. They say Facebook has faced intense criticisms. Biden said they're killing people. I mean it. Really, look, the only pandemic we have is among the unvaccinated. Is that true? And they're killing people, he said. And Biden's talking about the misinformation is killing people. So there's a lot of pressure on Facebook to promote authoritative information, to get rid of misinformation. But then, of course, the question becomes, as determined by who? Literally who? WHO is one of those entities, but except for when it isn't, because there is contradictory guidelines and protocols from the WHO and the CDC and freaking FDA. Boosters is a big example of that. So this is Facebook. I want to look at YouTube's really fast, and I'll kind of give you my final thoughts on this, and then maybe tee up the next thing that I'm going to be doing. So YouTube, about a month later, so this is September 29th. So as of this recording, less than a week ago, they released this blog post. They removed a bunch of accounts, removed a bunch of videos about misinformation, and these guidelines. Here's just a few excerpts here that I think are kind of fascinating. One, this has been this way for a while. So here's their COVID-19 specifically misinformation policy. Claims, categorical claims that ivermectin is an effective treatment against COVID-19, claims that hydroxychloroquine is an effective treatment for COVID-19. And then they also have claims that ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are safe to use in the treatment of COVID-19. So the safety of these drugs, which you can be prescribed in other situations, that is constitutes misinformation. Here's something that I think is really interesting about this, is that they say YouTube doesn't allow content that spreads medical misinformation that contradicts local health authorities or the World Health Organization's medical misinformation about COVID-19. This is limited to content that contradicts WHO or local authorities' guidance on treatment, prevention, diagnosis, transmission, social distancing, and the existence of COVID-19. So what's really fascinating about this is what did they mean by local health authorities? So if you're a doctor who says, which as we've seen, someone like Pierre Corey or something like that, or we've seen others, if you're a doctor who's a local health doctor or a local authority, right? And you have a practice and you've been treating people and you say, hey, I've been using hydroxychloroquine. I've been using this protocol. And here are the numbers. Here are the people who I've treated with it. That counts as misinformation according to them. But also they say that you can't contradict those people. So there's basically, again, it goes back to Hayek's filter that I read in the beginning, where it's like, it's not about whether it's true. None of this matters, whether it's the WHO or local or whatever. That can all change on a dime. All that matters is, does it support what we have determined is the approved thing? Does it support the current orthodoxy? But the fact that they were saying you can't even say that ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine are safe to take is really fascinating to me. If you want to read through this, I'll include links. I always say that, and I'm probably maybe 50-50 on whether or not I remember to, because it takes so long for me to upload stuff. By the time it's uploaded, I've forgotten that I was supposed to include links, but I'll try to remember to do it. Reading through this is pretty crazy. Some of the stuff they have in here. One of the ones, I don't know if it's in this one, or is it? It is. It's got to be in here. There's one about here we go. Claims that the symptoms, death rates, or contagiousness of COVID-19 are less severe or equally as severe as a common cold or seasonal flu. So this is another one of those statements where, again, it doesn't matter whether it's true or false. Flu does kill more young people than COVID-19, period, full stop. That's on the CDC's website. So that's not even like a debatable claim. From the data we have right now, COVID-19 is significantly less deadly for young children than the flu is. I mean, that's just true. But if you claim the symptoms, death rates, or contagiousness of COVID-19 are less severe or equally severe as a common or seasonal flu, by the way, they include this as content that denies the existence of COVID-19. So of course, this is all completely ridiculous nonsense, but go back to Hayek's quote. It doesn't matter whether it's true or false. The only question is, Does it support the original narrative? What was that? Let me find that quote at the very beginning. I just want to read that one little part. Yeah. Everything is going to be used to spread views which, whether true or false, will strengthen the belief in the rightness of the decisions taken by the authority. That's all they care about, is strengthening the views which like support how right the authorities are, period. That's it. So we have YouTube doing this. We have Facebook doing this. One thing that is actually pretty interesting that YouTube did that Facebook didn't is YouTube says, if you claim that, claims that any medication or vaccination is guaranteed prevention method for COVID-19 also counts as misinformation. Clearly, it doesn't count as that for Facebook, since I used that exact verbiage multiple times. Okay, so I'll stop sharing. We'll talk about kind of what all this means. Again, I don't have an outline, but I have some thoughts in my head. This, to me, I'll just tell you, is I use this term a lot whenever I read different articles or see different things, where I say it's shocking but not surprising, right? So what I mean by that is, as a, I think sane, I'm pretty sure I'm sane. I'm sure some people might question that, especially after all those posts about COVID killing more toddlers than D-Day, or both world wars combined. Or all casualties. Anyway, you saw it. You know the thing. As a sane person who still, I think, is fairly grounded, moral compass, everything still seems to be functioning, my sensibilities are shocked by some of these things that I see taking place, whether it's with big tech or our government or the corporate press. I still get these things where I'm like, these people are absolutely shameless, and it's managed to find ways to continually surprise me, and not surprise me, but to re-shock me, to demonstrate how utterly devoid of any scruples or integrity they have. They don't have that, or they don't have any integrity or character, anything like that. So it's shocking. It shocks my sensibilities as a human, as a person who, tries to do what's right, who tries to stick to what is true or provable or empirical or whatever. But it doesn't surprise me, because it's the same things that they have been doing. There are a lot of these moments that we've had. I think, again, go back to the election, the New York Post's story about Hunter Biden's laptop. Vivek Ramaswamy, I think is his name, who wrote the book Woke Inc., which is an amazing book I'd highly recommend, writes about big tech. It's towards the end of the book, but big tech and their role in a lot of this stuff. You want to get blackpilled on some stuff, read that book, because the way he lays out the stuff with corporations and China and Saudi Arabia is really fascinating and not super encouraging. But it's a good book, worth read. Anyway, so we've had these things where, okay, so Twitter kicks the president off. We have it where the New York Post story about the laptop is not allowed to be spread or shared or posted right before the election, despite the fact none of the claims in that story were proven false or were even freaking denied by, at that point, the Biden campaign. But they just remove it, right? Because they didn't want it to risk Biden not winning. We have a corporate press that has been compromised. We have this big tech that is clearly, they are censoring information that they don't agree with, not that is false, even if it's true. Again, the fact that YouTube has it in their updated policies is that even if it's true, if we don't like the conclusion, we will censor it. And as you saw from my little experiment, honestly, one of the reasons why it took me so long to make this video is I wanted to allow time. I assume that they get a lot of these claims about misinformation. So I wanted to allow time to see if they flagged any of them, and they haven't. So today it's October 4th, 2021. A lot of those posts are a month old at this point, and none of them have been flagged. They've been flagged, but none of them, YouTube hasn't responded with, yes, this is misinformation. COVID has not killed nearly as many people. Okay, so I'm going to pause this really fast. Okay, my camera's been doing this thing. I don't know if there's something I have to update where the camera randomly shuts off and I have to like leave the meeting and come back, which I'm not going to do. I'm recording this through Zoom. So I'll just leave it with this Hayek quote up here for you guys for your consideration. Anyway, this is pretty overwhelming. In my view, it definitely seems overwhelming. You know, one of the kind of metaphors that I've used of a really successful campaign at exposing things that are immoral or unjust to people that would maybe otherwise be apathetic or indifferent is the civil rights campaign. I'm not saying that what we're fighting is the same as fighting against Jim Crow. I'm just talking about the nature of the campaign itself. And part of that was that there were things put on television and in newspapers, and these images, some of these images are still seared into our mind today, you know, 60 years later, where people saw how bad it really was and they couldn't ignore it. They couldn't look away. And, you know, I've said we need something like that, where all of these people who think that this stuff, it doesn't matter or it's not that big of a deal, where they can see that it really is actually that bad. And that kind of depends on having a honest apparatus for spreading knowledge, the press, wireless cinema, and the schools. And we don't have that. We don't currently have that. So that is a problem in and of itself, and it can be very overwhelming. The question I kind of want to leave you guys with, and then I'll tell you where I'm going to be going from here in the very, very near future. The question is, are you still on these platforms? Are you still on the big social media platforms? If so, why? Whenever you listen to someone like James Lindsay or Carlin Bursinko, or anyone who's in this space saying, you know, the questions that they get from people all the time are, what can I do to make a difference? What's the thing that I can do? And people want to know what the smallest thing they can do is. And I would argue that one of the things you can do is you can just leave these platforms. It's interesting that the answer they seem to be looking for oftentimes is, what is the most convenient and comfortable thing I can do? For the reality is that for a lot of people, Facebook is how they keep up with old friends from high school, family members who've moved away, share pictures of their kid, if that's the kind of thing you're into, whatever. And it kind of feels like unfair that, you know, in order to push back against some of the stuff you hate, that you wouldn't be able to use this thing that is maybe a big, uses a big chunk of your time. Yeah, I understand that. I'm still saying that probably one of the smallest things you can do is to get off these platforms. I frankly don't know why any of the conservative people who were outraged by the things that I was saying in those posts are still on Facebook. It absolutely blows my mind that they are still on Facebook. Because regardless of what you use it for and why you think it's useful, your presence there, one, they data mine the shit out of you. They track all of this stuff through you, and they sell your data. They use your data. You are the product. I remember, I think I've told the story. Whenever I was looking for rings for my now wife, I was on, I went to like overstock.com, which, by the way, don't buy rings. I didn't end up buying anything from there, but I was just looking. And literally the ring that I was looking at later that day comes out. Her and I are looking at something on Facebook. I don't know. We were hanging out later. The freaking ring shows up in 2 advertisements on the page, one across the top and one on the side. Overstock. I get ads for Overstock, and it has the freaking ring I'm looking for. And I don't think she noticed it. So whenever I brought it up later, after we'd gotten engaged, she was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I didn't realize that." But it's like, this stuff, these guys are, they are not, what's the saying? If the product is free, you're the product. They don't have your best interest in mind, man. So I don't know why you're still on there. I think I would argue you should probably get off of Facebook and stop using it. Stop using their service. So that's the question that I would leave you with is, why are you, if you are opposed to, if anything I just said here is concerning to you, again, it doesn't have to be about vaccines. You can make it, you could literally substitute anything in here, like I did earlier with like a corrupt religious organization or something, and you would realize why it's not okay. You don't suppress truth just because you find it inconvenient, and you don't allow lies, especially harmful lies, that, not to say that all lies aren't harmful in some way, but especially lies that are clearly consequential, just because you like the conclusion. You don't do that. That is so morally bankrupt. And we are supporting these companies that are so freaking morally bankrupt and are complicit in some really horrible shit whenever we support them just by being on their platforms. So that would be a question I would ask you is, why are you still on these? I mean, that's why I got off Facebook. That's why I got off of it. If I could find a way to import like all of my pictures and uploads and stuff, like videos and stuff that I have on there, from, since I very first had joined it right at my freshman year of college, gosh, that was, 16 years ago. I would delete it. The only reason I turn it off. Well, I forgot what it's called. You don't suspend the account. The only reason it's deactivated is because of that. I've got some memories on there I'd like to preserve, but you can deactivate your account, right? So that's my question for you. Is just something to think about. What are the limits to having organizations, that it's not about whether it's true or false, but whether or not and do you think this is right? Does this describe how these things are operating? I think this is a pretty uncanny description, 80 years later, almost, since F.A. Hayek wrote it. So where I'm going with this, well, it is kind of funny, posting the stuff and kind of trolling, what ended up mostly just trolling the cons, by either getting really super charitable responses, which I feel bad. Sorry about that. To people who are pissed or confused. There are some people that were like, "You are not as smart as I thought you were. I'm going to be blocking you." I'm like, well, I'm probably not as smart as you thought I was. I'm not that smart, but I do feel bad. I literally treated a lot of the posts like Twitter, where the few responses I gave were, the ones you saw, like just obvious, just upping the ante even more. But outside of that, I didn't really respond, except for a few like private messages I sent to people where I'm like, dude, this is this is all there's a method to the madness, to quote Shakespeare. But what was I saying? Oh, yes. So where am I going from here? And this is where I'll get into a little bit of just what the last few weeks has been like. I've been working nonstop the last few weeks. I've had just random jobs, and I'll get into the details of one of them and why it's kind of relevant to what inspired me to create some of the next few videos I'm doing. So I've had a lot of time to think and kind of recalibrate, reassess, the ways that I'm thinking about things, the frames that I'm using, the heuristics I'm using, so on and so forth. And so I've been thinking a lot about kind of what comes next and what ought to be done, looking at like what exactly is content creation, which I've kind of landed on content creation as the business of changing the future, which, if you think about it, no one would create content like this, or at least I wouldn't if I liked the future as I saw it. I guess there's an argument to say you would want to preserve the future, but that's not changing it. But most of the people in this space are trying to change things. They're trying to change people's minds. For me, it's changing social trajectories, or at least engaging them. Anymore, I'm less convinced that they can be changed, and more convinced that we have to adapt to those things instead of fighting against them. Obviously, there's some big asterisks there, but I've been able to do that. And the next thing the very next thing I'm going to try and make, I don't know if it's going to be 1 or 2 videos. If it's one, it's going to end up being long. So I might make it into 2 parts, is I want to dive into the cathedral, what it is, and how we should, I guess, be digesting the reality of the situation we're in whenever it comes to the sheer magnitude of the power that these institutions have. So look at, what Hayek's talking about here, the whole apparatus for spreading knowledge. What does he use? How does Hayek see the whole apparatus for spreading knowledge? The schools, the press, wireless, and Hollywood. So you could say the news, the schools, and the internet, like big tech and Hollywood, right? They're used exclusively to spread views which strengthen the belief in the rightness of the decisions taken by the authority. Now, not all authority, but a certain authority, clearly. So there is a certain black pilling, but also I think once you engage in how bad it is, there's also a certain freedom that comes from that. That's what I want to talk about. I'm not interested in trying to reform Facebook. I'm not interested in trying to reform these big tech things. I'm not interested in breaking them up. I'm not interested in any of those things. I'm increasingly thinking about what do we do with the situation that we have that is actually realistic. And whenever you start thinking in that vein, it's actually kind of fun, to be honest. So I want to, because, whenever you see people, someone like Michael Malice, or I guess more importantly, someone like Curtis Yarvin talking about the cathedral and how bad the situation is, they each have their respective, I guess, quote unquote solutions. Neither of them are going to be realistically achieved anytime soon. And it kind of leaves you into this space where it's like, okay, so if you're saying here's this bad situation and the answer is just as utopian as someone on the far left proposing, a magical socialist system that would never, devolve into tyranny, it really, you're stuck, right? Because you have to have something practical to do with these things. So that's what I want to get into. But the first thing I want to do is get into like how probably regardless of who you are listening to this or who is watching it or listening to whatever, the odds of you or anyone, myself up until I think recently, and my guess is I'm still not there yet, of understanding exactly how bad and intractable the situation is very small. However bad you think it is way worse. It is way, way, way worse. And again, it's black pilling, but there is something on the other side of that that frees you in a lot of ways to engage with some interesting things and to actually work on practical solutions instead of just freaking spinning your wheels. So much of what we're doing these days is just spinning our wheels, screaming at the sky. Yes, there are some minor wins here and there, but it's almost all surface level. The places where it is substantive, I am thankful, but it is almost always local. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. So we have to get to a place where we understand the situation, because if we don't, then we're not engaging with the situation. We're not forming solutions that make sense or actions that make sense if we don't understand exactly where we're at. So that's what I'm going to be doing next, is trying to walk you through what is this cathedral concept? How did it get here? And what does it mean for us to say like, oh, holy crap, like this is way worse than I thought. What does it mean for us practically? Because again, it's worse than you think. The situation is worse than you think, but the realization of it isn't as bad as you think, at least not right now. So that's kind of where I'm at. And there's an outline that I'm working on. I'm almost done with it. Again, like I said, a lot of the questions, it boils down to whether it's going to be 1 or 2 videos where I break down how the marketplace of ideas got corrupted. What's fascinating is that Kevin and I did a video about this not that long ago. Well, not that long ago, over a year ago, actually. So I guess it's all relative. Kevin and I did a video about this at some point in the past, where we talked about the marketplace of ideas, where an Overton's window, I called it Overton's asymmetry, where I talked about how there's clearly something here where it's not the Overton window is broken. You hear a lot of these people who are, whether it's kind of classical liberals or conservatives, say that the Overton window has shrunk so much. And my argument is that no, it hasn't. There's one Overton window that literally has no limits, and there's another one that doesn't exist, or that does exist, but it's limited to, it's the circumference of a thimble. It's very small. And so we have an asymmetry there. So we talked about this for a while, but I want to kind of revisit that and talk about how did it get like this? Why are things the way they are? And then the practicalities of it whenever it comes to governance, bureaucracies, companies, and so on and so forth, and how that all kind of comes together to form what you would just call our current effed up situation. And and try to, I guess, as much as possible, pull the curtain back on that, and then use that as a jumping off point to getting into some practical stuff. So a lot of this is kind of stuff that I've just been thinking about, and trying to synthesize some things here. I'll get into some of those details in my next video, which I'm going to try to have. What's today? Do I even know what today is? Today's Monday. That's right. I will try to have it done within the next few days. It's going to have a lot of clips in it, so that it's going to be kind of a bear to structure, but we'll see. I think it's going to be one of the more important things that I've made for you to engage in, just that is just pure facts and just insights. One of the things, and I'll kind of leave it here. One of the problems of not having an outline is that means you don't have an end to the video. So I don't want to ramble or anything like that anymore than I already have. But crap, I don't remember what I was going to say. So I guess that's it. I remember. There, especially if you've kind of been doing, I mean, if you're watching this, you've experienced this, but you understand that there are levels, especially for someone like me who comes from the left traditionally, that what Bridget Fetisi, I think, is geniusly dubbed, the default settings, where you have this kind of worldview. And then the red pilling it should maybe really be called like red peeling, like peeling layers back on an onion, because it's one realization that leads to another. You just can't become disillusioned with everything at the same time. That would literally drive us insane. But you are constantly finding things where, like, holy crap, I had that wrong, or that was lied to about this thing, or I misunderstood this system, whatever. And so I guess the best summary, the next thing that I want to do is kind of move past, like, hopefully get to the next layer of engagement with this stuff for you, where, peel back whatever it is, the next layer of this kind of further understanding the situation, the world we're in, how these institutions work, and how they got the way they are. That's kind of what I'm talking about. Maybe leveling up a little bit is the wording you might use, in terms of really trying to engage in the reality of this, how effed it is. But there's a little freedom there, and I'll talk about that too. So that's that. To the people who, one, if you're still watching this, thank you. Two, if you're someone who's still watching this and found yourself unwittingly involved in that little experiment I did on Facebook, thank you for your participation. The consent form will be in the mail here within a few weeks. So go ahead and just sign that and post date. We'll treat it like it's a ballot. How about that? I'm just kidding, kind of. Anyway, but thank you. Hopefully, if you're one of those people who is like, what the heck is he doing? Hopefully that explains it. And I will pose a question again to you. Why are you still on Facebook? Why are you still, Instagram is owned by Facebook. Like, I get it. These things are neat for the people who find them neat. I am not one of those people. I keep Google freaking on my phone, dude. I get ads all the time for TikTok. I get TikTok ads on YouTube and on just my Google Play for whatever I'm doing on my phone. I'm like, man, I'm not going to download TikTok. Like, I literally get push notifications asking me to download TikTok from Android. It's insane. I get it. People like using these things, and there was a time when it made sense. I don't think now is that time. I think the smallest thing you can do is to opt out. And then we'll talk about what that looks like on a more macro level in the next video, as I kind of get into the cathedral and what can be done about it. But anyway, that's it. If this kind of thing you're into, please like, share, and subscribe. On YouTube, you can join sub to me on YouTube. That's a Return to Reason. The best place to find me is actually on my locals community. To my locals community, I'm sorry I've been such a worthless scrub by not posting anything for a while, but I'm trying to get back on a schedule. So hopefully that'll change, and not just on a schedule, but not be so completely jam-packed. Man, I haven't even gotten into the craziness of the past few weeks. I just realized, but I'm kind of talking about that in the post that I'm going to do. So yeah, it's been nuts. But so returntoreason.locals.com. Then follow me on Twitter. That's at my mundane mind. Those are all the best places to find me. ThinkSpot as well. Return to Reason there. And my wife is slowly but surely starting to work on an RSS feed for me, so you can get the stuff in podcast form. If if you prefer podcast, one thing to say is that, so on Locals is free to download. I don't have anything behind the paywall on my Locals community. And I don't upload podcasts except for there's one exception. But if it's uploaded in video form, you can listen to it like a podcast. You turn on the video, you can minimize it, you can close the screen, whatever, and you can still listen to it. So they're the same on there. So that Locals is useful even if you just like stuff in podcast form. But there's so much more to it than that, and there's more coming. But my wife was working on RSS feed stuff, so my Spotify isn't like a year and a half out of date, because we were doing that for a while, and then we didn't, and then we stopped. And so trying to get back to it. So thank you for your support. Thank you for your patience during this lull and kind of releasing content, but hopefully we're kind of getting back to it. That's it. And I'll check you next time. Peace.